Alright, so if we're gonna look at this one, we create a new HTML file for that. Let's actually create a folder. So size 2/index, and we create a JavaScript file. Look that. And we needed somewhere to output something here, so let's just create a div with an ID output. So in the JavaScript we should fetch the URL, which we can get from here. Just copy this, paste there. Then we do .then response.json, and then we have the actual response. So we can just log that to check that it worked.
So, but just before we continue.
Yes.
The last response is available. I can assign it to anything I want.
Yes, the last response, you can call it some whatever you want. Yeah. These are just variables in callbacks.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, that's what I want.
So it's just normal callbacks.
It's just confusing with the first one.
It's a bit confusing that we're calling it the same thing twice.
Exactly.
But that's what actually happens here is that once you get this back, that's actually only the first line of HTML, and then you need to call JSON because then it'll wait for the rest of the response to arrive and then pass it. So that's technically why it's two things and not just one line. But yeah, it's a bit confusing at times. And again, as mentioned, this usually gets wrapped behind another function that then does all of it correctly, and error handling and all stuffs, which right now we don't have any error handling at all. So that's really bad, kinda. So we have the output, and as we saw here, we get an object back that has people, which is an array. So we can go people to response.people, and then we can do for const person of people. You have seen these for loops before, I hope.
This new one.
We actually looked at it last time, but let's go with the old way of doing for loops then.
But we can do it, so we can learn it.
Yeah, but just less confusing, because I think people are generally busy enough learning the other things.
Because I use it for each.
Yeah, but then you also understand it. So we have each person individually. We can log them out just to check that we got things as we expect. So we get boom, 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 people. Then we do document. We want to output two things here really. We want to output this, where we replace a number of astronauts, and then we want to output the names. So for the first one, dot create element. I'll just create it as a header. And then we do header dot inner text is equal to this, where we then replace in people.length. Because people is an array, we can just do length. And then down here, we actually need to append it somewhere. Output.append child header. And then down here we just create a paragraph for each. It's equal to person.name, I think it was. And then output.append child p. We format everything so it's nice. And as you can see, we get the names and how many there are. So the important thing here is to understand, like, once you get the response, it's just a completely normal JavaScript object you're working with. There's nothing magic about it at that point. So like we've done this a lot before, where we take something and then we iterate over it. Like we did it a lot last time when we looked at how to implement that HIFBay exercise.
Just there's something here. What's this? Yeah, from beginning there's something called number down. Why we don't call the number instead that we call people.link? And the
So
response of
yeah, so here, so you can use either, like using the number of elements in the array or just using the number, you'll get the same result. Whichever one you use is up to you. The reason why this is separate, some APIs, they might have a million you can get back, but you might only get 20 at a time. So it tells you that there's a million, but you only got 20 in the array, and then you need to call the API with a page number to tell it, now I want page 2 of them. And then you go through all of them using a request for each page. So then you might need to send like 50,000 requests to get all the data actually. So it just tells you there's a million in total, but you only got 20 right now. So you know that you need to request more.
That's why I add the number in the end.
Yeah. So
But the API is can you go around the API limitation? Let's say in your case, and it's just an example. You said you get 20.
if they
at a
say
time.
you get 20 every time, you get 20 every time. Then you have to figure out, well, how does this API work? Why does it behave like this? And how do I work with it correctly? And that's part of your job as a developer, is working with these APIs. Most of the time you'll be doing what we call plumbing. It's essentially moving data from A to B, which is like pretty much what we're doing here.
Plumbing?
Yeah, that's what plumbing does. It moves shit from one place to another.
Here, like, there's something also about, yeah. Just you confuse when
I
like.
need to take a tray.
Okay, see. The recordings will be available.
Yes, super. Thank you.
Just get confused with people because you say right or get console people responsible.
Just deal with numbers. If you get
Yeah,
confused
because
with people.
down when he write like $people.link, I was wondering how he get it direct. Because it should be first responsible.people.link.
Because that's the length of the array.
No, that's
the
because
index.
yeah, that's because up here, but that's probably what you said. Like, yeah,
Yeah, I just noticed that you define people like people.
yeah. So that's because I'm lazy and I would hate to have to type response to people every time. So I just put it in another variable so it's easier. I could also have made it just call it P, and it would be shorter. So about this page thing, you see here, we have this paging, so it tells you, you have probably seen this on many pages. You go in and they tell you that there's so many pages because this API, it only returns 30 things at a time, but it tells us that there is actually more than that, so there's 300 something here.
So he's also like API?
Yeah, this is using an API, so just to load this page, I think we're doing like 15 API calls to get different data and logging in and stuff. So as you can see here, there's 322 files in total, but it's only showing me 30 at a time. This page is actually this API is actually so flexible that I can tell it, well, I want 50 on each page now. So there's still only 322, but now there's actually fewer pages. Now I only have 1 out of 7. So that's an API you'll see, and if you can see that if we log in, give it a second to reload, you can see there's actually even more now, and which also results in a lot more pages. So yes, so now you understood a bit about how we'll be interacting with APIs. There's actually the last exercise, but I don't think we'll manage to do that today. I know we won't, because we only have 3 hours. So, but try doing this. Otherwise, I think we'll start with this the next time around, because the promise thing, it's not going to take 3 hours to go through, I hope. Because it's easier to deal with. It takes a bit less code. So next time we're going to start with this exercise. I would still recommend you do the homework this week. So have the homework done. Next week we'll then be looking at promises. I showed you a bit like how you could chain promises, but we'll be showing how to create our own promises and going into details on how this chaining actually work. But before that, we'll do this next time, just so you can try working a bit more with the APIs and how they work together.
So we should first make this exercise and then we start with the homework.
I mean, if you want to do this at home, I would really recommend you do it. Right? Then you'll be well prepared for the next time. But otherwise, make sure to do the homework once you get home. If any questions, as always, feel free to write me on Slack,
Okay.
and I'll try to assist.